everybody. Welcome to Heart to Hearts. I am Grace.
And I'm Terrence.
Unfortunately, I have a lot of experience with loss due to deaths in my family. My sister, well, my mom, my father. Right after my mom died. My mom died when I was 6. After my mom died, my father kind of disappeared. So I don't really know if he just wasn't around. And I remember how things were different during that time. Like once my mother passed away, I remember, even though I was 6 years old, I do remember my life changing, continuing to change. So I just think losing people, and it's not always due to death, just losing people due to divorce, people moving away. When it's someone close to you, especially when you are a child, it has a lot of effects on you as a child.
I think a lot of times we don't know how important moments are. I remember as a child sitting on my grandmother's swing in Memphis, Tennessee, and we would watch cars go by, and she would cook pancakes and take care of me and take me to the grocery store, take me to church. Pilgrim Rest Baptist Church. Oh my goodness, I would get some good sleep in that church.
What was the name? What was the name of it?
Pilgrim Rest Baptist Church. And I was getting some good rest in the church as well. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna keep it 100. I couldn't wait till they got to that last song. The last song was till we meet, till we
Oh, nope, you don't have to say
meet.
it.
Okay. So when they got to the
Nope.
till, you don't want my singing. I just have such fond memories of her. And sometimes when we're in the minute, we take those minutes for granted, thinking that our loved one is going to be there forever. And a lot of times that's not the case. My grandmother gave an entire set to my parents when they were married. Because I wasn't there, and because I have no memory of my parents being married, my parents being together in the same household, because my parents divorced when I was very young, this kind of gives me a concrete memory of them being together. I dealt with a lot as a result of divorce. I wish that I had seen my father more often. I usually saw him on weekends. But divorce is devastating. In the case of the teacup, not only does it remind me of my grandmother, who I just loved and was very fond of, but it's like a huge reminder of a marriage that I don't remember. My parents are awesome. I love them, but I don't remember them living in the same household. And so I quite often would see my father on weekends or every other weekends. And it wasn't enough for me. My father is a great man, and I know that he loves me. But sometimes we wish that our life had panned out differently. What would it have been like had my parents stayed together? Just wonders and wishful thinking.
I think a lot about like what ifs, if this person was still alive, how things would be. But like I said, I've gotten numb to a lot of it, which has caused me not to deal with some stuff. But it has also caused, and this is the first time I've ever said this out loud, but it started to cause like racing thoughts and really scary thoughts about loved ones that are here. In particular, my son. I remember having to get counseling specifically for that because it was so scary, just the thought of losing someone that I love. And when you think about your child, that's someone that you love the most, right? And I can say that with a conscious heart. Thinking about losing someone that is so close to you is terrifying, and it becomes even more terrifying when you had that experience already. And it's kind of like you live in this state of fear, and it's scary. But I do remember having to combat that. And that was simply me giving my child to God. I'm not going to even lie, like I'm not trying to be super spiritual or anything like that, because it was really, really messing with my emotional well-being. I had to say to myself, I don't have any control. This is not something that I can control. So I have to choose to enjoy the time right now. I have to choose to enjoy, and I have to think differently about what the future may hold. But it's hard. It's really, really difficult.
Is that a fear you still have?
I have trained myself to think differently. I'll say this, and I don't know if I want it to be in the show or not, but I want to say it anyway. When I have negative thoughts about death and dying and, losing someone close to me, I have to start imagining their life beyond now. I've seen my son's wedding. I've seen his kids. Like, I have to imagine that so I won't imagine anything else. It was difficult at first. It was difficult, but when I have those thoughts now, that's what I combat them with. And it has become easier. And I dealt with that for some years. And we've never talked about it, but because I was scared to talk about it. I'm like, how you kind of take the don't speak stuff into existence. Just to talk about it or to think about it was like, no, I'm not. Yeah, I don't want to deal with this. But I had to figure out how to deal with those negative thoughts and dismiss them.
It sounds like you almost was giving yourself just hope, just kind of drown out the fear. You shooting your vision from right now to
the
future. That's a good strategy.
Yeah. I took the saying from that movie with Denzel Washington. I forgot the name of it, where his son was in the hospital and he was having all the trouble trying to get him treated. He said, my son is going to bury me. I say that with every fiber of my being.
And I think all of us as parents, we can identify with that moment. It's like, this is some foolishness. Whatever it takes to get my son and my child what they need, my child is going to get what they need.
Of course, we can't control life and death, but I do wish that under the circumstances of losing both of my parents, I had a family that was more nurturing, that knew how to, because that's another thing. Like we deal with loss and people lose their parents, or even with divorce, like just the idea of loss. We deal with it, and the people around us, the people who are caring for us, don't really know how to help you deal with that because they're dealing with it too. That would be the one thing that I would change, having family members that knew how to nurture the little 6-year-old after losing her mom.
I've had a lot of compliments on being a father, and I'm grateful for them in light of the fact that I saw my father on the weekend. It almost seems like I've seen multiple scenarios where people who did not have loved ones that they wanted to have actually ended up doing a stellar job, because it almost seems like we kind of do things how we would have wanted it. Do you think that you did? I feel like you did, based on what I've seen. It's been an outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of reminds me of the nurture versus nature conversation that we have, or that I've had on occasions. I feel like I went above and beyond trying to make my son's life different than how I was raised, in particular as it relates to nourishing him emotionally and helping him, or allowing him to express himself, showing him love. I tell this, I don't know if we've ever talked about this before, but I remember when Jalen was about 9, maybe 8 or 9, and I was living with my mentor. She allowed me to come and stay with her, and she was really, really helpful to me and my son. And I was really close with her, and Jalen was close to her. He called her TT or whatever. And we were just kind of playing around one day, and she grabbed him and hugged him. And my son went berserk. Like, he went crazy. Like, he was like somebody was trying to hurt him. And I was scared. I was shocked. I was trying to figure out what was going on. I'm like, what was that about? And I even started going back in my memory bank, like, did something happen? Did I miss something? And after talking to my mentor, after having like this long drawn out discussion, I actually realized that he had that reaction because he wasn't used to getting hugs and being held. And I remember not getting held. People who raised me, like, I don't remember them saying I love you, or me saying, we didn't have that type of relationship. And I felt horrible for a while because I was like, oh my gosh, there was something that I missed. And it was like, no, it was something that you missed in your childhood. But that incident happened to help me understand he needs that physical connection, because I was, hitting everything else, but I didn't realize that the physical connection was missing because it was missing for me too. And I remember when I started hugging my child and telling him I love him, it was uncomfortable for me. And it's a scary and beautiful thing all in one, because to have a 10-year-old, 8, 9, 10-year-old, and them not be used to getting affection from their parent, from their, especially their mother, is like, wow. But I was grateful that I saw that experience, and it helped me understand, okay, he needs this, and this is something that you have to get over. And because of the love I have for my child, I got over it with quickness. Like, I don't do the touchy feely. I'm just not, that's just not me. But even though it was uncomfortable, I forced myself to do it until it wasn't uncomfortable, because that's just how much I loved him. And that's the experience that I wanted him to have because of what it did to me.
Wow. So you were very vulnerable on a recent episode that we had, and I'm going to be vulnerable in this moment, and it's actually going to kind of make us talk briefly about Stephen McQuarrie's episode, and that he referenced his father, who ended up going away. Before his father went away because of the business dealings or whatnot, I had a chance to really get to know his father, and his father was great. I would watch as a mid-teen teenager, around like 14, 13 to 14, I would watch his father wrestle with him, and he lived with his father. He depended on his father. I was a little bit jealous at that age. I was like, I wish I had this in my life. I wish that I had this. And I mean, because it is something to just have a parent and a dad there and just wrestle you and show you the love that you want. And again, no strike against my dad, because he does show love. He's a very kind-hearted person. I just thought that it would have been wonderful just to have that under my roof. I did feel a sense of loss not having it under my roof. With my twin boys, I try to show them love. I try to show them kindness and show them what I wish that I would have had under a roof when I was coming.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Not having your father in the house affected you. What made you be a different father? I mean, like, as far as being present, because you can be in the same household and still not be present. What made you say, I'm going to do things differently?
I never wanted anybody to feel the void that I did. Always wanted my father to be closer and in the household. And I have to say that translates not only to my 3 children, but also into the mentorship that I do with young men who I have an opportunity to learn and grow from as well. I just know what it's like to have seasons of just wishing that there was an additional male role model. Once again, my father did what he could do, and he's a great man, but I needed more.
You needed more, and it sounds like you gave more, or you give more because of what you needed. That's a really interesting phenomenon, to be able to give something out of something that you missed.
We talked a little bit on the last episode about how you can end up getting beauty from ashes, so to speak, or you can end up getting something that's wonderful from hurt. And I do think that as a result of some of the things that I wish that I had as a child growing up, that I worked really hard to just try to support those I love and others, and to be the best father and role model that I can be.
I honestly feel like the loss that I have experienced turned into so many other things, because losing my mom also lost, I also lost out on the nurturing mother-daughter conversation. Like, I lost out on all of that, and it wasn't replaced. Some people lose their parent and they have something there to have that replaced, a step parent or aunt or somebody that's, stepped in. But that increased the loss for me, because I was 6 years old and I still needed it and didn't get it. That made it worse for me. And not to say that, there is a good situation when someone loses someone, but when you lose someone and they were responsible for showing you or instilling certain things in you and you still don't get that makes it worse. That's when, trying to find those healthy things in an unhealthy way come into play. And I did that a lot, looking for love in all the wrong places type of thing. And I had to go through that and go through a lot more hurt and heartache than I would have liked to. And it was simply based on other people in my life that could have picked up the slack for me losing my mom. And I'm not trying to put anyone, my family or anything like that down, but they didn't have the tools necessary to give me what I needed. Thank God that I did find people to get it from them. But before that, I was getting it in places where I shouldn't have.
What kind of support systems do you have now?
Counseling. I attached myself to a lot of people women in particular, that were strong, put them in places in my life that were useful.
And poetry has been therapeutic for you as well, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah. When I first started writing poetry, it was therapy, but now I look at it as ministry. My sister, Jameen, she was someone that I was extremely close to. Losing my sister was probably more significant than my mom because I was 6 when my mom passed. But when my sister passed, who was someone I was really, really close to, she was 26 and I was 20 years old. That was really, really hard because that was the first person that I lost. And it was a matter of, I'm close to this person. I have a really deep, close relationship with this person. This is my sister. We grew up together. We went through things together. And then I lost her. Now, when I lost her, I do remember being mad at God because I remember specifically saying, why did I have to lose my sister, to making that statement to God? But poetry, that's when it started to play a really big part in my life. My sister, right before she passed, she went to this place called the Legacy Cafe in St. Louis, and they did open mic. And she was trying to get me to do like an open mic poem, which I had never ever done before. And I'm like, no, I didn't even think that my poetry was that good. I was just writing it because it was, healing for me. But she ended up performing, and it was just this amazing thing. My sister was like a really fun, loving, free spirited person. And after she passed away, my 22nd birthday, that was how I did a tribute to her. I went to that same cafe and I did my first open mic poem. It was the most freeing thing I had ever experienced. I had already been writing poems and was using it as therapy, but saying a poem that was extremely vulnerable for me, it was kind of telling all of my business. That was scary, but it was such a freeing experience. And from then is when I started saying, okay, this is something that I'm going to use to help other people. I remember people coming up to me after I said the poem and they were crying, and I'm like, what is going on? I felt kind of weird because that never happened to me before. And like I said, this was my first time ever performing, if you will. But after that, I knew from that moment that I was supposed to use poetry as ministry.
And that's awesome. That's awesome, Grace. I can identify with that. And you know how much healing writing my first novel, Innocent Guilt, was for me, which dealt heavily with the issue of fatherhood. It's something about using those creative juices to bring about healing and stir up what's in the soul. Hopefully, not only bless yourself, but bless other people. My friends, go spread joy with a contagious smile, and a hug doesn't hurt. You never know what life you might be changing or whose heart you might be healing. With my little sister Grace, I'm Terrence Hardge. Thank you for joining us.